Welcome back. You're watching the Press Club. I want to talk about the Media Association president. Last week, and we've disagreed with him on a number of occasions before, but I think this week he gets the opportunity to say, "I told you so," on two counts. One, we have the elections in Guatemala tomorrow. Reporters Without Borders has been very concerned about what's been happening over there in terms of the election, the days and months leading up to, weeks leading up to the elections, where a number of reporters have been under pressure, threatened, attacked. 74 attacks have been recorded leading up to the elections over there. 2 journalists have been killed so far. Tensions are running high, and you cannot help recall what Clinton was saying about our own elections. While I don't think, and I hope we don't end up at that stage, you know, it does raise issues, you know, about how heated things can get and how politics can affect the media and political relations. The other incident happened on Wednesday at DBS, Newsmaker Live, where one of the callers to the program, you had 2 police officers in studio. One of the callers openly threatened to take the life of the host. Again, an issue that has been raised by the Media Association president. We have discussed it here. We would not like to get to the point where we see people actually acting on those threats, and I agree that all of them should be taken seriously. But what can we as individual journalists, what can we as a media association, a media fraternity, apart and outside of the media association do to guard ourselves? And I think a lot of that has to do with public perception of the profession. How do we change that?
I don't think we could guard ourselves. It was never intended that we guard ourselves. The worst case scenario of us having to walk around with bulletproof vests, as I always refer to. The least case scenario would be us being concerned about being the recipient of a stray bullet in an inner city ghetto where we go and cover something quickly. But I think there's a fundamental difference in the situations that bring about what we've just described in Guatemala. In Guatemala, what we have is a national political crisis, where the president has been accused of, and most people seem to believe, is that he has been corrupt to the extent that the Constitution has been amended to remove his immunity so that he could have ended up in court and faced the charges, and there's going to be that presidential election. So it is a situation of national uproar, upheaval. It's not an ordinary situation, and in any extraordinary situation, the press is expected to perform in an extraordinary manner as well, because they would be after the story. If I was in Venezuela, one aspect of our story would be to go after trying and prove whether the president was a thief or in presidential armor. You know, the president and his party would be reacting in a particular way to the fact that this is what is happening. So they would be reacting strong. The opposition or the rest of the country would be reacting just as strong. So in that situation, I don't find it strange, and given the size of the population, I do not find it strange that the number of incidents involving journalists and reporters has increased. It doesn't in any way diminish the level of concern expressed by Reporters Without Borders. We have another very similar situation elsewhere, but I do not see that happening as yet. In Malaysia, where the Prime Minister, $700 million appears on his account, and he says he didn't steal it. And he doesn't want to be accused of being a thief, but he's refusing to explain how it got there. $700 million, and he says, I didn't steal it, but it's on my account. How the press there is dealing with that in a country that has had its own history in terms of the role of the military and how the press has been treated. You look at Indonesia, not Indonesia, Thailand, for example, where the king is supposed to be His Majesty of all he surveyed, but we know it's the military running. The prime minister, the military chief has become a prime minister now, and he is making the rules for the press as to how you cover government, i.e. military activities. So I do not think that we are, in this coming election in St. Lucia, the next election, I don't think it is a case of national political upheaval where the Labour Party feels so threatened that it has to resort to extra...
I'm not disagreeing with you, but what I'm saying is while we are not in the same situation, do we want to allow ourselves to get to that point before we start sitting down discussing how...
That's, I was coming to that.
Yeah.
I was coming to that to say that, like I said, with the other issues, the more we discuss, in our discussion, I've given 4 different examples,
right,
okay, that we could pull from. How many other colleagues, you know, engage in trying to keep in touch with what's happening around the world to the extent that we could have a round table for 1 hour discussing these issues in the way that we do. I'm not saying we're better than the rest. I'm saying that we make use of the availability of access to news sources, you know, that are at the fingertip, so that there are things we can do. The first we need to do in that issue is begin to discuss how far or close are we to those situations. And our response to that will determine what we do, how fast or slow we proceed, being prepared for such an unwanted reality.
Because I'm not aware that it is being discussed at the level of the executive of the Media Association or the general membership of the Media Association.
It's not being.
I'm not aware that there have been any meetings apart from those that were held with the government minister responsible for information and broadcasting immediately after the election of the executive to discuss any media-related issues.
We know how the thing operates here. The press wants a story. It calls the president of the Press Association. He gives them his view, and it is put across and interpreted and sold as the view of the Press Association. I'm not sure that even the president, when he speaks every time, intends to say that he is speaking for all journalists, but he will have been called by a colleague to give, you know, as a stakeholder, to give a position. On the second example, there's something we can do. The one of the unfortunate threat to the presenter, was it Newsmaker Live? Yeah, on Newsmaker Live. You and I know of something that has probably disappeared in the world of instant information, and specifically in relation to broadcasting, and that is the time lapse. Whenever I did radio, I always insisted that we could have a 7-second delay, so that if a situation like that happens, you know, it can be blocked before it goes out.
Yeah, but that doesn't eliminate the threat.
No, it doesn't limit the threat.
The audience is not exposed to it, but at the same time, there's still that person out there with that intent.
To what extent does somebody who really wants to kill somebody call them live on air and say, "I'll kill you"? You know, I think there was something wrong with the caller. I'm not saying that we need to brush the threat away.
That is why I initially was reluctant to even carry a story on it. You know, but I think I was a little concerned that what if, like you said, the person is demented, the person is high on drugs. What if
it's not? What if that's not the case?
You understand? You want to raise the issue and point out to the public that there is that issue there that we need to deal with, you know, that is affecting the media, potentially, you know, can affect any one of us. Unfortunately, Mr. Busse, we're out of time. It flies by very quickly, but I'm sure there are a lot of issues that we can continue discussing next week, including this is not going to go away anytime soon.
Including the results of Trinidad's elections.
Definitely due out by midnight on Monday.
And Guatemala will know who's going to be their next president.
By tomorrow. Thanks again. Always a pleasure having you.
As always.
Always a pleasure having you watching. Join us next week. Hopefully, same time, we'll be back here, and hopefully you'll be with us as well.